Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin is live for us at the Pentagon. Jen, that sounds like a lot on its way. What else can you tell us?
Well, Harris, first of all, U.S. intelligence officials are still saying they do not have any concrete evidence linking Iran to the Hamas terror attack. They obviously are looking very closely. There's obviously been a great intelligence vacuum in recent days in the lead up to this, but U.S. intelligence officials still say they cannot concretely link Iran to this attack. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin told reporters on his way to the NATO Defense Ministerial in Brussels that he offered U.S. personnel to help rescue Israeli and American hostages and added the Defense Department has the ability to rapidly deploy other resources into the region if necessary.
When I spoke to Minister Gallant on Sunday, I offered our assistance, our special operators, the help from our special operators, our intelligence community in planning and developing intelligence.
A Defense Department official clarified U.S. military liaisons were already on the ground in Israel and attached to the U.S. Embassy before Hamas invaded. Special operations personnel were already on the ground in Israel as part of their jobs at the embassy or in support of unit-to-unit bilateral training agreements between U.S. and Israeli special operations. The Israeli Defense Ministry released this footage of a direct weapons shipment from the U.S. landing at Nevatim Air Base in southern Israel yesterday. President Biden promised additional military assistance, including ammunition and interceptors for the Iron Dome. U.S. defense officials have told Fox News that this is not because Israel is running out of ammunition, but because the U.S. is trying to deter a broader conflict from happening. Boeing accelerated the delivery of 1,000 smart bombs to Israel after the Hamas attacks.
We stand ready to move in additional assets as needed. Let me say again to any country, any organization, anyone thinking of taking advantage of this situation, I have one word: don't.
Meanwhile, the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group is now on station in the eastern Mediterranean and will be joined by the USS Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group, which will be leaving Norfolk, Virginia on Friday in a previously scheduled deployment to the region. Secretary Austin held a third phone call with Israel Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, reiterating U.S. support. Quote, "My focus is on making sure we can do everything we can do to help contain this to the point where it doesn't spread throughout the region and also do everything we can to support Israel in its efforts," Austin told reporters en route to meet NATO defense ministers in Brussels. Harris.
Jennifer, thank you. General Jack Keane, retired Army four-star general, Fox News senior strategic analyst, also chairman of the Institute for the Study of War. I welcome you in Focus today. General, first of all, I don't know if you could hear Jennifer's reporting, but there is now an imminent situation that we're told about a ground war. Can you walk us through strategically what that could look like and what the implications are?
Yes, certainly, Harris. What's happening here is, we have four major adversaries in the world: China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, in that order. And we have, and all of them, interesting enough, have stepped up their aggression in recent years. And why do you think that's happening? They perceive the United States is weak and has gotten weaker and possibly even in decline. At least that's something President Xi and Putin both believe. And then we have three geographic areas in the world that contain our vital interests. One is Europe. And Russia has started a war in Europe to defeat Ukraine, take ownership of it, and indicated many times that they intend to expand. We cannot let Russia win that war. All of this is connected. In the Pacific, President Xi is telling us that if Taiwan doesn't voluntarily reunify, that he will take it by force. And he's told his forces to be ready by 27. He is threatening war in the Pacific, which would be catastrophic in terms of the war itself and the implications for mankind and the economy. Now we have Iran, and let's stop fiddling around with it. Iran has started a war in the Middle East using its proxies, in this case Hamas, possibly expand with Hezbollah in Syria and others. Why is that? To destroy the state of Israel. Israel must win this war. Strategically, the alternative is absolutely unacceptable. To reset the entire table in the Middle East if Israel lost this war. What does that mean? That means if Israel needs our help militarily, and they have never asked for our troops since 1948, not one time. They've asked for our equipment and our munitions. But if they need our help, then we give them whatever it needs for them to win, period. Because the alternative strategically is absolutely unacceptable.
All right.
These three regions of the world are related to each other, as are our adversaries who are absolutely attempting to take advantage of the United States.
All right, I want to ask something that's pretty probably obvious to our viewers as you're talking. And I wanted to ask it immediately when you said, if Israel needs our help, they've never asked for troops before, but we would be there. What does that mean for the fight in Ukraine? Because they would love nothing more than for us to do even more to help them win that war against Russia. How does the United States balance what it has? I mean, clearly our relationship with Israel is far more important than special, both diplomatically, strategically, all of it with Israel. They are family. What is Ukraine in all of this scenario?
Well, certainly it emphasizes, I think, the significance of making certain that Russia is defeated in Ukraine. And
can we do both?
They don't expand beyond that. Yes, we can do both. We're not, look at, Zelensky's owns now 83% of his territory. He's defeated half of the Russian combat forces, and we haven't provided a single troop to that effort. We've just provided weapons. That's a heck of a return on investment. We're going to help Israel here, and we're going to do it with support, and obviously also with moral support. And that's very good, and I applaud the president for providing that kind of moral support. But if they need more than that, my point is we have to give it. We cannot let Israel lose this war, because the implications in the Middle East are catastrophic, and it is catastrophic for Israel.
So my other question has to do, and I'm sure viewers who are watching carefully, and they do. I mean, the American public is paying attention. They know what's at stake here. When you hear our reporter Jennifer Griffin say, "Oh no, there are no markings of Iran that the Pentagon can prove on this," and then they hear me say, "This thing's got oven mitts that say Iran on them, and they're using them in Syria and Lebanon to make sure that those guys are part of the game too." And then you say, "There's no mistake about it, Iran is in this game." I mean, does the Pentagon not see it?
I mean, this is an absurdity in my view. I mean, they're trying to find a piece of information. What are they trying to find? An order that somebody gave or eavesdrop on a conversation? And this is an organization that Jake Sullivan admitted broadly is complicit in providing training, financing, and support. To support, IRGC leaders visit Hamas on a regular basis. They visit Hezbollah on a regular basis. I mean, the next words out of their mouth after he said they're broadly complicit and laid out why they're broadly complicit, he should have said, and we should make the assumption that Iran is heavily involved in the planning, preparation, and coordination and green-lighted this war. That should have been made even without having eavesdropped on a piece of evidence that suggests that they took action. We know they took action. Let's make the assumption that they've done that. And I think that's what we expect from our leaders, to draw conclusions, strategic conclusions from what's happening right in front of us and inform the American people. Look, the Israelis are very, very complimentary to the administration over their support to them, as they should be. But when you hear the Israeli ambassador to the UN said, but we have our fundamental differences. You know what that fundamental difference is? It's all over Iran. They believe the United States is appeasing Iran, has had the wrong strategy in dealing with Iran since this administration took over. And they know full well that Iran is completely complicit in using Hamas to try to destroy Israel. That's a fact. And they know Hezbollah, if they come into the war, has the same mission statement. And who is telling them to do that? Iran is telling them to do that. We got to put the facts on the table and draw some conclusions here about what is really happening and educate the American people. I understand why they don't want to say that, because that implies, what are we going to do about it? And it implies, well, we must take some action.
But, you know, General, for those of us who, and of course you served, I'm just the child of somebody who was gifted who served. But look, I mean, if you say it or you don't say it, it doesn't change the fact. If it's Iran, eventually we are going to have to do something. Maybe by naming it, we can begin to decide what that something is going to do. Again, I'm not looking at it from 37,000 feet with your experience, but you don't change the fact just because you can't find a piece of paper that says Iran's guy did this. There are plenty of things that we may know to be true without that. I mean, we've been at war before. We know. Look, sooner or later, we're going to have to make a decision about what's happening in Lebanon and Syria. And I want to get your thoughts on that. You open up another front in this war, and does that then potentially do what you said, which is they've never asked for our boots on the ground before, and I don't want to use that term because they're human beings in those boots, our troops, our soldiers, our Navy, everybody. But do you think that could tip us?
Well, that would be Israelis' call. Look, there's 130,000 rockets and missiles that Iran has provided to Hezbollah. And they've created this arsenal over a number of years. And in the most recent years, they're giving them advanced missiles. So they have greater range, greater lethality, and greater precision than anything that Hamas has. They can reach all of Israeli cities. If they are able to overwhelm the air defense systems and their air power, their fighter jets and their cruise missiles and their artillery cannot destroy all the launchers and the infrastructure that supports them, and they're beginning to take significant casualties on a regular basis, it's reasonable that they would ask the United States for help. And what kind of help would we provide them? We would give them air support. We're not talking about troops on the ground, air support. And it would be significant. We're moving it into the region. We brought a couple of fighter squadrons in the region. We already have significant capability in the region, and we would use cruise missiles, et cetera, to do that. I'm sure we've shared all the intelligence we have on where those launches are, where the infrastructure is, compared to what they have, and they probably have a pretty good feel for what they got to do. But if the Israelis can't do it by themselves and they ask, I cannot imagine an American president saying no to that. So, yes, we could get into this. Hopefully we don't have to get into it, and the Israelis can deal with this by themselves. But we got to be prepared to do it, and I'll take it at face value. That's why we're moving all the ships in there and the support in there, not just a show of force to deter, but to convince them that we would come to Israel's aid. I would have said those words publicly in the president's speech yesterday. I wouldn't have just said, don't do it, and we have this capability here. I would have told them I would use it. Deterrence has two factors to it, Harris. Factor one is the capability, and that capability we just put in the region, and some of it's already there. Factor number two, you have to convince your adversary that you're going to use it. And I would have used those words. If you come into this war and the Israelis need help, then the United States is going to come and help them. And we will destroy you. And I would have said words to that effect, whatever words he's comfortable saying, but much more specific. So you don't want your adversary to have any doubt about it. Yeah. If you're really using it as a deterrence, and he's using that word, that's why the forces are there.
You're talking
so make the commitment that you'll help. You're
talking about the USS Gerald Ford that arrived yesterday, and then reports that the Eisenhower is on its way now. And, you know, I wrote down what you said. It's brilliant. Deterrence has two factors, capability, and I wrote in conviction to use it. I want to point to, and I thank you for that, because it really does speak to kind of the empty words sometimes we hear politicians say as they try to search to find the words that will be less incendiary. Everything is on fire right now. I want everybody to look to the left of their screen. Israel is fighting back against these terrorists. That is Gaza. And we just saw, General, a huge amount of black smoke go up in the center of that city. And it's dissipating a bit now. What are they hitting them with? What can they do during the daytime? And then how does that change at night?
Well, what's taking place here in terms of fires is two things. One, the Israelis are still attempting to suppress the rockets and missiles that are still in the Gaza Strip area. And obviously they're very good at hiding and protecting those missiles and launchers, except when they're going to use them. So that's, you see fighter jets, attack helicopters working that target. But then it seems that the Israelis have just about told everybody they're going to go into the Gaza Strip. So they're using pre-assault fires, military terminology, to prepare and help prepare a pathway for them to move ground forces in. And they obviously have some pretty good intelligence on what's in there and where it is. And that's what those pre-assault fires are targeting. That black smoke, they probably had hit something that dealt with either ammunition or fuel. To get that, it was likely a military target that they hit. And this ground force moving into Gaza, this is going to be very different than anything they've done before, which normally, I use the term hard and fast. A lot of firepower, get it over with a week, 10 days, 3 weeks at the outset, and get out of there. This time, they've changed the mission. The mission before was to set Hamas and Islamic Jihad back a number of years. Now the mission is to eliminate them as a political entity, which means they have to have somebody else to run Gaza at some time, likely the Fatah on the West Bank. Well, we'll see. But the military operation is very different because they want to destroy the entire Hamas network. That means the leaders, the fighters, all of their military infrastructure, the tunnel complexes. That means neighborhood by neighborhood, block by block, building by building, very systematically, will likely take weeks and months. And you have to have patience. And the United States leaders have to have patience. And the international leaders have to have patience in dealing with this. This is a much longer and much more complicated operation.
General Keane, thank you.